excited about how it all turned out. It was a ton of work, Robert.
And we are,
That was so stressful. That was more stressful than anything else.
Are we gonna call for her to do, withdraw and then go to
You start,
budget?
yep, you start your meeting.
Okay, I call this meeting to order. Please rise to the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Shelley, please call the roll.
Christine Arnold. Here. Ben Catanzaro.
Here.
Priscilla Patella.
Here.
Eric Dye.
Present.
Robert Dyer.
Here.
Robert Hitchcock.
Here.
Nazzy Nugent.
Here.
Roxanne Valancourt. Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Do the revisions first, please.
Okay, so there are revisions to tonight's agenda. Does everyone have them?
Yes.
Okay. And for the ones online, we're adding the food service action items 6 and 7. They have to totally be read into the minutes. So that's the only revision. Okay, so now we'll turn it over to Michael for our first hour of budget.
May I make a suggestion?
Oh,
We have no town official comments, but we have 14 public comments. And usually we do the hour of budget first, but all of the public comments are about the budget. So I
Okay.
think it's appropriate to read the budget comments before we get into the budget hearing. Although it's a change, I think it makes sense.
No problem.
If you agree, Priscilla, I'd like to
No
do that.
problem.
The board agrees with that?
yeah.
Okay, great. We have 14 comments, plus one parent that emailed me last night said him and his wife had trouble getting online, so I'm gonna read your email tonight. And so it's not just me talking, Tony and Michelle are gonna read some of the comments. So Michelle, if you start, read the name, the town they're from, and the question or statement, and then Tony, you go, and then I'll finish it up. Thank you. I think it's better that way.
Yeah,
Ready?
fine.
Ready to begin?
Yes.
This question is from Corey and Christopher Overcash. I was disappointed to hear about the possible cuts of positions for the upcoming school year. Now is not the time to make such cuts. Cutting an assistant principal at the middle school seems like an irresponsible choice for the district to make. Students at that age go through a lot of emotional and behavioral issues in a normal year and now are facing even more during the pandemic. Cutting an administrator will put an extra burden on other staff members to help when the principal is overwhelmed. These staff members that will help are most likely already busy and don't need to be stretched further. Cutting the assistant principal in the middle school is not in the best interest of the children, and decisions should be made based on that. In addition, cutting any counseling positions is not in the best interest of the children either. With the pandemic, it is important that positions are not cut right now. It would be better for the district to be proactive and know that students will need a lot right now and possibly for years to come. The district should not be reactive and think these positions can just be replaced if things start to go downhill. Let's not wait for things to happen. Rather, keep who we have in place when our children and staff members have been facing so many challenges with the pandemic. Region 16 has done a great job throughout the pandemic, and it would be a shame to see things change in a negative way. We hope you take our concerns into consideration, and thank you for your time. Next question from Lindsay Smith. Can you explain how irresponsible and unethical it is to add managing a state internship program of 60+ internships to the already taxed high school counselors' responsibilities when their caseloads are already approaching 200 students each, who also have to manage 30+ 504 plans and other responsibilities? Next.
Answer that?
No, we're not answering any of those right now.
Oh, my God.
You can answer if you'd like to. I am your chair. I'm not the answer.
Would you like me to-
We've never said that we're taking that position away or that we are giving it to the current guidance counselors.
Next question from Kelly Milley. Why would our school cuts even be on the table? Our children needed to endure tough times during remote learning. Cuts would be devastating to our children. Next question, Jessica Scaretto. The Connecticut State Department of Education highly suggested that SEL be addressed with students this year. What I have learned that the heavy lifting has not yet begun. You don't even know where the students are. You don't know the extent of the emotional damage this year has caused. You go to a doctor and they immediately tell you that the pandemic, social unrest, and political unrest have affected adults and children in ways that exacerbate any condition they have or created a condition that was not present before. How can the cuts that are mentioned be supported? Children need connections. They need people to see them. Taking away staff takes away the ability for our children to be seen. Reducing an administrator at the middle school stops children from being seen. Removing a counselor keeps children from being seen. Put it to the community for a vote. This is not the time to remove more from our children. They have lost enough. Next question, Sarah Fernandez. Mr. Yaman and Board of Ed, how would you suggest we explain to our children who have formed close, trusting relationships with the wonderful support staff that you are choosing to cut, that they will no longer have that safe place and that safe person whom they trust to help them through a tough situation, like they've done over the last god-awful year? Please enlighten me. Thank you.
The next question is from Colleen Henriquez from Prospect. Why are we letting go of educators in such a fragile time that we are living in? Where are children in elementary, middle, and especially high school who are feeling isolated at home with no social interaction? Sports taken away, friends, and in-school person learning. We need these teachers/counselors more than ever now. Letting go of 2 counselors and the elimination of Mr. Stive's position will greatly affect our kids. They play a big role in their lives. Please reconsider letting these teachers stay. There has to be another way. I have heard Mr. Stives has had a great impact on many of the students who have passed through his office. I would like my kids to get that same opportunity. Thank you. Next question is from Renee Ganovelis from Beacon Falls. I would like to ask if the board would please reconsider the proposed cuts, especially after this past year. I believe the children, all of them up through high school, will need more than ever career support, guidance counselors, and a strong support group other than their teachers. Next question is from Courtney Santoro from Prospect. As a parent of an 8th and now 6th grader at Long River Middle School, student and parent relations are handled mainly by the assistant principal. When I address any situation with the principal, I am almost always referred to Mrs. Myers, which is fine with me. She is great at her job. Mr. Newharum has a fully loaded plate already, and my son feels comfortable talking to her. The proposal of eliminating her position and taking a well-known and liked educator away from our community is baffling to me. In regards to this change, I do have some concerns and questions. 1, who will monitor the cafeteria during lunchtime? 2, who would be conducting teacher evaluations? 3, who would be handling all the disciplinary issues and contacting parents regarding said issues? And most importantly, 4, who would be responsible for attending the PPTs and 504 meetings? 5, is this a 100% necessary cut? Next question is from Rosa Ramelhi from Prospect. I am sure we can all agree that even though the student enrollment may be declining, the need for mental health services is increasing. In addition to the mental health of everyone being impacted by the pandemic, school districts are going to see an increase of special education and 504 referrals based on anxiety and academic concerns, which means that caseloads for school-based counselors will increase, leaving less time to intervene with unidentified students who require mental health support. While I understand and wholeheartedly agree with the mentality of it takes a village and appreciate the fact that the district has implemented the ruler program, it is not a substitute for trained professionals who know how to deal with childhood trauma. How will the district ensure that the needs of all students will continue to be met with the proposed school counseling staff reductions? With the proposed cut to Long River Middle School administration, I fear that the building principal will be spread so thin that he will no longer be able to lead a building, but merely manage it. This is not a criticism of the current administration at all. While I am sure that the Board of Ed has looked at surrounding towns, I was taken aback when I found the following administrator-to-student ratios for nearby schools based on niche reports. City Hill in Naugatuck, 1 to 222, 668 students with 3 administrators. Tyrell Middle School in Wolcott, 1 to 276, 552 students with 2 administrators. Amity Middle School in Bethany, 1 to 157, 315 students and 2 administrators. And Dodd Middle School in Cheshire, 1 to 341, 682 students with 2 administrators. 2 administrators for 459 students would provide a 1 to 229 ratio, which seems to be aligned with the surrounding towns. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around how any building principal at Long River Middle School would not burn out, impacting the education and emotional well-being of the students. How will the district ensure that the middle school administrator will be supported, and what is the plan to reallocate the responsibilities of the assistant principal?
Oh, you have Tom?
That's all I have.
All right, I have a few myself. Jennifer Shea from Prospect. Is it possible to bring the entire senior class back together for in-person learning prior to the end of the school year? Shane Cameron from Prospect. In light of the budget surplus for 2020 school year, why was the decision made to return the excess funds rather than accelerate the completion of the capital improvement schedule over the next several years? Put those surplus dollars to use. Doing so would have potentially avoided the need to trim the proposed budget for 2021-22 via staff cuts, which will have detrimental effects on our children. And then I had an email from, excuse me, from Mrs. Ann Brines and Gary Becerra, who said they weren't able to do a question, so I'm happy to read it for them. The newspaper states Region 16 employs 9 guidance counselors. Please clarify the certifications of these counselors. It is my understanding that there are 8 employed certified and working as counselors, one which does not carry a caseload. Additionally, there is a career counselor with no counseling certification. It is my understanding in the past 2 years there have been counseling cuts. The middle school lost a full-time school counselor, ultimately losing 2/5 counseling staff, and Laurel Ledge lost a full-time school counselor, losing 3/5 counseling staff. Counseling cuts have occurred, and I'm opposed to any further cuts, especially as we emerge from a pandemic. I could just answer that. When we cut a guidance counselor 2 years ago, we hired a social worker, and we moved a guidance counselor from Long River, and we put that guidance counselor at PES because we had 3 there. So there really weren't any cuts, and we hired a full-time social worker from Long River. So it was a reallocation where we increased the number of social workers and we reduced 1 school counselor for that question. And for the question on the high school from Jennifer Shea, unfortunately, we are going to have our reopening committee. It was in my Friday update, where the reopening committee is going to meet twice in March, and we're going to be bringing to the board on April 7th a proposal to hopefully increase the school day for K-8s. The high school is still going to be a problem because the state is not going to lift the social distancing for the distance in classrooms at the high school. So I don't anticipate the high school coming back full. There'll be a hybrid model. However, we do have a proposal we're going to start working on that may increase the number of kids that come back on a regular basis. For anyone else that has a question that I have not replied to already, some of these questions were emailed to me and I already replied, but anyone that didn't will have a reply from me next week on each and every question. Priscilla, thank you for that. I think I should start, Bob, then you go after me, or would you prefer? It's up to you.
Just follows what's already transpired, and then you can go into the
Sure,
budget.
absolutely.
All right, in addition to the 14 questions and comments that we received tonight, for the record, as Vice Chair, I need to report to the board the following. I'd like to thank the many members of the Region 16 community, including parents, students, business members, and staff that have contacted me personally regarding the superintendent's proposed budget. Many have thoughtfully expressed concerns about the proposed changes. Some of the nearly 70-plus emails I have personally received have gone directly to other board members as well as myself. Many have been addressed just to me. And I want to go on record as having received them and note that they are all available for Board of Education members to review. In summary, I don't think we want to read 70-plus emails tonight, but in summary, the vast majority of people expressed concern for what they perceived as the elimination of the high school career awareness and internship program. For the record, the elimination of this program is not being proposed and never was proposed. I am sure the Board of Education members would agree with me and share my view that this is an extremely valuable program for students and will be continued. Unfortunately, misinformation spread through emails and social media has caused some misunderstandings and undue community anxiety. With regard to other concerns, others have expressed concern for the proposed reduction in the counselor position at this time and its effect on all grade levels. Several expressed concern regarding the elimination of the middle school assistant principal position. The board welcomes these thoughtful concerns and will seriously consider them as part of our final budgetary discussions. The board encourages the public to keep in contact and welcomes all future input into the process. As always, student safety and social, emotional, and individual needs of our students remains our top priority, and I remind everyone that this is the budget process, is a process, and it goes on until May, when ultimately the voters in both Prospect and Beacon Falls will have the final say on the district's education budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All right. So, as most people know by now, or I think have known, we take the first hour of our meeting to start having a budget workshop. So this is the second budget meeting we've had so far, workshop, March 10th. The first one was February 24th. So what I try to do is review last week's questions, concerns, additional information brought forth, and some questions that have come up. So the first question that still is a resounding theme is how, and this comes from, I probably get 100 emails a week, if not more, just on the budget. And I reply to all of them, but when I can find a common theme in the emails, I think it's important for me to then bring that forth to everybody because it's what people are thinking. So the first comment, and I know this has had a lot of discussion and we beat this horse around the track, but I think it's worth me reiterating. Received a number of comments about how there can be an increase if we've had a $600,000 surplus from the previous budget season, and why is there an increase if we are cutting staff now? I think it's important to discuss first how we create school budgets, then I'll get into staffing. So we use zero-based budgeting, which means it's a clean slate. There's no dollar amounts in any line items when we begin the budget. When we start with first, we input our contractual and anticipated increases. So for instance, utilities, we have a 6% increase announced by Eversource, which is an increase of $52,000. I'm rounding these numbers off for next year. Transportation, we have a 5-year contract, and a couple years ago, when the state removed the ability for us to lease buses and increase property taxes, we now have an increase each year. Next year's increase on transportation is $84,000. Salaries, contractually bargaining agreements, and we have 3 union contracts in this region, UPSU, which is non-certified, administrators, and Region 16 teachers. That's $678,000. Medical benefits, contractual bargaining units, and estimated insurance company. This is a fluid number, it goes up and down as we negotiate, but we have to put something in as a placeholder now. We're at $174,000. Special education outplacements, 3% increase in most of our residential facilities, plus we have 2 new students that entered the district this year. It's a $446,000 increase. And finally, debt service. I think we have $24 million in debt. We're very healthy, doing a great job, but there's a $143,000 increase. Therefore, before we start the budget season this year, we have a $1.58 million budget that we're starting with ahead of last year. So our budget has already increased by $1.58 million as a result of this. That's why the $600,000 doesn't have anything to do with next year's budget. That goes back to the towns, or 1% can go back to capital non-recurring. So hopefully that clarifies some of the questioning. I think it's also worth mentioning that the 2019-2020 with the surplus, that $600,000, we realized a lot of that because school buses and several sports didn't run from March to June. as well as utility bills were substantially lowered by the buildings being unoccupied in light of the pandemic. These are not savings we can rely on this year. So it's really gonna be a different year. The other thing I wanted to point out is our last 4 years of enrollment at the middle school at Long River, in 2017, there were 556 students. 2018, there were 538. 2019, there were 513. 2020, 492. We anticipate in 3 years we'll be lucky to have 400 students at that middle school. We're going to have between 415 to 420 students. Finally, and I don't want to reiterate what Bob said, our personalized learning advisor, which is the position that is responsible for the internship, that position was a 2-year, it's only been a position for 5 years, and it's great. The internship program, the career pathways we've created, the STEM program, and the health pathway is excellent. Kids getting real life experience, especially with seniors, we think is invaluable. That's never been a position we're ever going to cut. The internship position is going to exist. Whether it exists part-time or full-time is the conversation, and if the same staff member is going to be in that position or not is going to be a result of if we have reductions in force. Finally, what I'd just like to say before we get into the rest of the presentation tonight is the caseloads of our school counselors are not going to change. Their caseloads are not going to increase. Right now, when we talk about reduction in forces and letters, we have 3 elementary teachers that have possible reductions in force that were hired as a result of making classrooms smaller because of COVID. We only have one school counselor. It's supposed to be called school counselor. I still regressed 20 years ago when it was a guidance counselor. We have one school counselor that may be eliminated as a reduction in force, and the possibility of our personalized learning advisor. Those are the only cuts we have right now. So I know I think it was Enriquez, said we have 2 counselors in the internship. That's incorrect. We only have one counselor that may be cut, and the possibility of personalized learning advisor at that point. This is a fluid process. This is going to go on for a month and a half. At the end of April, we'll have a better idea of class sizes, reduction in force, and where we are with the budget. I think it's great, and I welcome all the opinions, the emails. I'm happy to respond. I'm glad the community is involved. I think it's important for us to know. When you're planning a budget and creating the core values and beliefs of the school system, you look at 3 things. You look at student needs, you look at your staff needs, and you look at the community wants. What does this community want, Region 16? That's just as important as what our kids needs and what our staff needs. So I don't take this personally. I'm happy. Hopefully our responses are informative and they're respectful. With that being said, tonight we're going to present our proposed budgets in the area of curriculum, technology, special ed, and our capital improvement plans. Rochelle Rayner's going to do curriculum. Matt Brenning's going to talk about technology. I'm going to speak for special ed, unfortunately. Dr. Sarah Steinberg is on as well. Our director of special ed is out for personal reasons for a period of time, but she was instrumental in helping put together her presentation. So at that point, we're going to start with our presentations for tonight. Before we get into that, I have just a snapshot of where we are today. Matt, is it being presented on the screen for the public?
It is, right now we're still on camera, now we're on the presentation.
Terrific. 2 weeks ago, our initial proposal was 0.75% increase. However, since then, and as I said, this is a fluid process, we've increased that to 1.42%. That is a increase as a result of 2 new special ed students that moved into the district, and they're outplaced students. So we're at about a $300,000 increase. Now we're around a $550,000 increase. Our budget has since come up the last time I proposed. So as of today, it's a 1.42% increase, and that's a result of 2 new out-of-district placements that'll be put into our budget next year. I have some highlights. I don't want to get into a lot of them, but I think the real glowing things although we have an increase and we're looking at staff cuts and there's a lot going on, I'm very proud of what we've done in math in this region. As most people know, we brought a new math program in called Bridges, K-5, and Michelle's gonna speak to the new math programs for Long River and Woodland. Matt's gonna speak about technology. We're gonna invest about $1.2 million over the next 2 years in the infrastructure and teaching and learning for technology, and I really think Region 16 is cutting edge. We're a one-to-one device, and we say it's 3 through 12, Matt, is that correct?
Right now, we are 1-to-1 K through 12.
K through 12. Well, we planned for 3 through 12, but we've had enough devices that we are 1 through 12. And I'm pretty proud of us. And we did this long before we knew that the pandemic and remote learning was going to become a priority. And we have a pretty solid 5-year capital improvement plan. We'll talk to that, and we might be looking in 2 years at bonding some of it, because we really want to make a substantial dent into Woodland, which has some issues with the track and flooring that Mark Perino, our Director of Facilities, is going to speak about. So at this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over. The real gist is that I'm happy for the community involvement and that our budget is going up slightly as a result of 2 new special ed students. But this number will increase and decrease as the board decides to make cuts or maybe not to make cuts. This is going to be a fluid process until we get to May 4th. So thank you. Michelle, at this point, would you please take over?
Absolutely. Good evening. I'm Michelle Rayner. I am your Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. So to begin my presentation or discussion this evening about my budget, I'd like to review just quickly some of the highlights from our past year. And although it's been a very interesting year, we've had a lot of successes this year. We started our year off with our iReady data in reading and math for our students in grades 3 through 8, which indicated that our kids are on the path for proficiency despite being virtual from March to June last year. As Michael mentioned, this is our first year implementing our Bridges Mathematics program in grades K through 5, which has been progressing nicely, and teachers have been able to fully embrace all of the components of the new curriculum even during this time. The CNA program, which is part of our Allied Health Professionals Pathway, has approximately 17 students that are well on their way to earning their nursing assistant certification, and we are really proud of them and their efforts. In addition, at Woodland, we have students taking 7 ECE courses, 2 SCSU courses, 11 AP courses. And our data from the 2019-2020 school year, a reminder in the spring, is when our kids at Woodland took the AP exams in the pandemic, 76% of our students performed at level 3 or higher on their exams. So this year there have been a lot of positive things that have gone on. Looking forward to new programming and changes that are coming. Mathematics, we are extending the development of new programming in mathematics from grades 6 all the way up through the high school. In grades 6 through 8, we are adopting illustrative mathematics, and at Woodland, we are adopting SAVAS AGA, which is Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 programming. Our talented and gifted programming. In an effort to ensure consistent access to this programming for our TAG students in grades 5 through 8, we are shifting to offer this programming after school, and we're excited about the possibilities for that. Some additional changes with our world language programming. With grades 3 through 5, we are going to provide after-school world language enrichment in the Romance languages, and if possible, in Chinese as well. With respect to the middle school, due to declining interest in Italian, students in grades 7 through 8 will take Spanish now, with the opportunity to earn world language credit upon successful completion of 8th grade Spanish. So in considering that piece and looking forward to the high school, we are looking to create opportunities for our high school students to access additional world languages through the utilization of a world language virtual platform. And we're in the process of investigating those possibilities now. We are reinstating our STEM enrichment after-school programming, which was on hold as a result of the pandemic. We're excited about that.
Hopefully.
Yes, yes. So we're looking towards the summer program, and then next year, we offer that fall, winter, and spring. In addition, through Naugatuck Valley, our partnership with our manufacturing program, we had to pause that this year, and we are on track to put that in place. So in summary, we are implementing some really great programming for our kids that supports them in mathematics and enrichment in the upcoming year. And a final note, my curriculum budget last year was approximately $176,000. This year, the requests are coming in at approximately $122,000. So that's a decrease in my budget of about $53,000 or a 30.5% reduction.
Also though, Michelle, we made a substantial investment into the bridges last year.
Yes, we
So
did,
that was
so
like
I was just gonna mention that.
$60,000,
Yeah.
which is already in place this year, so.
Yeah,
I
that
think it
is,
kind of evens out, only because we have a new program coming in. And the middle school program is free, am I correct?
absolutely,
Thank you.
yes, absolutely.
That's great. They'll charge us eventually.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions for Michelle about curriculum or concerns?
Sorry.
Eric or anyone? Go ahead.
Just the Savas, have you actually had some teachers test that and look
So
at the?
that's a great question that you asked. We actually piloted that for the entire year. They gave us all of the resources. We are using it virtually. That's the intention of the program is to go virtual with it.
Yep.
And they provided free professional learning throughout the entire year and supported teachers. So it was something that we started at the end of last year and progressed through this year, and overwhelmingly, the high school teachers, the math teachers want this program.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Anyone online have any questions? I don't want to ignore the board members online.
Yeah, this is Christine. I just want to clarify that the students in the high school, grades 10 through 12, will continue to take Italian so they can complete their program.
Yes, that's correct.
That is correct.
Okay, and the other question, will they still have access to take the ECE Italian program, or is that going to be phased out after?
That'll be
10th grade?
phased out after 10th grade.
Okay, so once 10th grade, our seniors, that'll be the last year.
Yep.
They'll be able
But
to-
Christine, I'm not sure what the online platform's gonna look like yet either. We're still exploring different platforms.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that the classes that are presently taking Italian will be able to continue that until they graduate, so.
Correct. And if new kids, Christine, if we get a group of 9th graders and we have enough kids that want to take Italian, we still have a full-time Italian teacher. If the demand is there, we will provide the teacher for it.
Okay, that's good to know, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Absolutely. And at this time, Matthew Brennan is going
I thought you were
to,
going to say the prestigious director.
the prestigious director.
That is good. You had a much more elaborate presentation.
Dr. McGeehan refers to Mr. Brennan as the technology god. So without further ado,
We are live, Michelle. All right, good evening, everyone. I am Matthew Brennan. I'm the technology director for the district. I'd like to just give a brief overview of the technology budget that's proposed for next year. We are requesting a budget, or I'm requesting a budget of $1.3 million roughly, which represents a decrease of about 1% in the technology budget number from the prior year. Some of the major initiatives that we have in the budget, the first one I'd like to talk to you about is the expansion of the one-to-one program. So pre-COVID, we were one-to-one in grades 5 through 12 with shared devices in the other grades. COVID, forced us to make a change to that. We are now one-to-one in K through 12. And following the year, I think that's something that I would like to continue. The teachers and staff would like to continue for Region 16. So it represents a significant expansion of the program to encompass those extra grade levels. We reached one-to-one with the iPads in grades K and 1 through reallocation of devices. So we had to take some away from staff members in order to have enough deployed to students in order to move away from a shared model. I think that shared model where you have devices that are shared by the classroom is going to be one of those things that we make a change to in a post-COVID world. I think it just works better for the technology and for the education of the students. Along with that expansion of the one-to-one program comes some additional costs. You know, there were ancillary issues like cases, spare parts, chargers, that we have to add on to more than just the device hardware itself. So that's something that we're going to be looking at too. Lease purchasing is going to represent a larger portion of the technology budget going forward. So we have we're reaching a phase where a lot of the technology that we purchased through the building project at Laurel Ledge and Prospect Elementary School has now been with the district for 5 going on 6 years, and that's got to be replaced out of the operating budget. So we're, you know, when you look at those costs for the IT lease purchase outlook, you know, that's what's driving some of that cost in addition to the one-to-one program, in addition to the regular hardware investments we need to make as a district. You've got to look at the IT lease purchase outlook as a 2-year phase. The way we do our leasing in the district, we will enter a lease, we'll maintain that lease for a couple of years, and then 2 years later we'll enter a new lease. So really the funds that we're paying back for those lease purchases represent our purchasing for the 21-22 and 22-23 school year. This year, or in this cycle, we're looking at classroom AV as a major driver. The classroom smartboards at Prospect Elementary School are giving us more and more problems as time goes on. It's also important for us to replace those with the ViewSonics we've been buying for the rest of the district. It's an important component towards moving those teachers to Chrome OS, as the students are 2 through 12, as the teachers are already at the other 3 schools in the district. We're also looking at purchasing Chromeboxes for all of those interactive flat panel displays. That gives the teachers another option to present to the classroom. It lets them use their device for something else while the Chromebox connected to the display is doing something with the students. We are up for PES faculty and staff replacement. We're up for Mac replacements district-wide, and though district-wide is primarily the high school. Here we're talking about fine arts, including music, we're talking about journalism, we're talking about video production. So the Mac refresh is something that's on the table for this summer, although it's slightly complicated by Apple's new M1 Silicon. I don't want to be purchasing old generation Intel Macs. I want either to try to stretch those another year if necessary, or be purchasing the M1 Silicon Macs going forward. We've got one-to-one Chromebooks. Our new Chromebook deployment plan is going to see us deploying fresh Chromebooks at the grade 3 and grade 8 level and hanging on to those Chromebooks for a minimum of 5 years so that we can maintain the same refresh cycle, but also be, you know, getting those new devices down, you know, to those lower level grades. As part of that, we'd be looking at implementing the one-to-one protection plan as we hand out new Chromebook devices to students. So for instance, if you're in 2nd grade next year and you're one-to-one with Chromebooks, you know, we would be covering device damage instead of asking parents to pick up a protection plan on a device that they're getting that may already have seen several years of service with the district. And building project iPads also represent a fairly significant cost for us. Those were, again, brought in with the building project, but it's time for them to be replaced. On the software side of the house, you know, we are looking at bringing in some new software to empower teachers, things like Equadio, GimKit, Delta Math, and Pear Deck. A lot of these software choices are driven by the teachers, which is exactly what I want to see, them coming to me with, hey, this is what I want to use in my classroom, this is how I want to implement my curriculum, and I always want to try to support teachers whenever they come to me with a software request like that. Some tools that we purchased for COVID were very successful, and we're looking at extending those in ideally a post-COVID world. So things like Nearpod, Reading A to Z, and School Dismissal Manager, which parents at the elementary schools are familiar with. You know, there's been a lot of positive feedback from those, and it's something, you know, we want to carry on with. The last thing I want to touch on during the overview is the WRHS Copy Center. We have an aging Konica Minolta production level copier that requires an operator and has been, the lease for that copier expired in 2018. We've been using it since then off lease, but we're reaching the point where parts are hard to find. It's difficult to maintain the uptime we need on that copier. So as part of the replacement, we're looking to move that to a self-service model, bringing in 2 high-capacity walk-up copiers that teachers can use to do their copy work. And that's going to give us significant cost savings over replacing it with a more complicated production-level copier. But at the same time, we're still going to have all of the functionality we have today with that production-level copier. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the technology budget.
Now, I have one question, and then just as clarification. Grades 3 through 6 will be taking their Chromebooks home next year. That was something we started with the pandemic, just like 9 through 12.
Yeah, right now, everybody takes their device
Yes,
home
correct.
every
But
day.
next year, we discussed, and I should know the answer to this, I apologize, but I'm trying to be transparent. We haven't talked if the younger grades will take it home next year.
Yeah,
We did this year because of remote, maybe if we do remote snow days, I don't know. That might be a conversation later. 6 through 12 for sure, I don't know where we are gonna be with K through 5.
Yeah, 5 through 12, we were always planning on sending them home every day. Below grade level 5, it was really, pre-COVID, it was a matter of teacher discretion.
Okay, great, thank you, Matt. Go ahead, Nazi, I
Yeah,
apologize.
that's okay. Matt, quick question on network and security. Any concerns with anything that we account, like we had this year come up, that we need to adjust with more security or anything?
No, we made several investments last year that we're continuing on in the budget this year. So for instance, we purchased Carbon Black as our new antivirus solution. We purchased new firewalls with Cisco Firepower. So those investments will continue, but we don't have anything new that we're adding. It's more of a continuation of what we implemented last year that I'm comfortable with.
Okay. And then phishing stuff has been kind of stable.
Phishing stuff has been kind of stable. Honestly, my proposal, I am not planning on carrying on the proactive phishing testing software. We did implement that this year. Our scores have been very good from our staff. So if you look, we're like 20% or more below the industry average for education when it comes to clicking on those phishing tests. Honestly, I get more, since we implemented that phishing testing software, I get emails every day about people, hey, I think we're getting phished, hey, I think, and it's a test that we sent out on purpose, but they just keep flooding my mailbox. I'm like, yes, please, it's okay, just ignore it, like, you did the right thing, delete it, don't touch it. So I know it's getting through to folks, and I actually, I think we can continue that campaign on ourselves without the cost of the automated phishing software next year.
That was gonna be my question, is what the cost is, but as long as we can do it.
I think,
without the cost.
I think it's a cultural issue for us. And I think enhancing that culture of security, of not touching things and not clicking on things, is of more value to us than that automated. It was great for this year, don't get me wrong. I wanted to know what our overall click rate was going to be, how many people were falling for this. But in terms of the remediation tools, I feel like, all right, we can discuss this with our folks. We can continue to make this a priority for us. It's clearly working already. We have not been sending people through their remediation program because it's just too, I find it to be too generic. Like when we're dealing with our teachers and what they're clicking on, I like those solutions and those answers for them to be very customized to Region 16. And this is what an IT department email looks like. This is what something from the business office looks like. Like it comes from this particular employee. It's not some generic HR at region16ct.org. And a lot of the phishing tools that they were looking at for remediation, I think they were just too broad to be useful. And that's one of the reasons why I'm opting not to continue that this year.
Thanks. Just one more quick question on the AV with the 384,000. How much of it do you think we have to do for this year?
I think
I know it's probably better.
Matt, that's a decision on how we're gonna roll it out.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
that's a
some of
big
it has to
conversation.
break though, like that we have some that have to be replaced, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I consider Prospect Elementary School to be high priority, something that has to happen this summer, because that feeds into other plans that I have technology-wise for the district, like the replacement PES computers that we're buying this summer. We also have some
Matt,
classrooms.
not to go against you by any means.
Yep.
They're not broken. And correct me if I'm wrong, the flat boards that we want to replace are compatible to the Chromebooks. So it's a rollout plan that we need the new ViewSonics or something similar, because they gotta be comparable with the Chromebooks, but they're not broken.
They're not broken, but they're also not, we have our share of AV issues in those classrooms that, I have plenty of trouble tickets on that, we've got to go address. I am, yes, the move over to Chrome OS is a big factor in that, but it's also, partly, I think we'll have better performance in those classrooms and a better experience for the students in those classrooms.
Thank you.
So, just, Nazi, to answer your question, if I could through the chair, the other thing that Matt didn't touch on, when you do something, we did this 2 years ago, we took out all our smart boards.
Where?
At all, in district-wide, we took out all.
In Seymour, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we were seeing high costs, like $10,000-$15,000 a year just in replacement bulbs.
Yeah, well, yeah.
projectors.
We ran through that years ago where it was,
But when you do them in bulk,
Yeah.
you're able to get awesome pricing, I mean, hundreds of dollars per board, difference in pricing, so. Matt, I think it's a great idea, I think you should do as many of them as you can. They've been awesome through COVID to be able to have the remote students up on the view board, still engaging with the students in the classroom. I think it's a high priority. I support it.
and I knew that we'll get a better pricing deal, I'm sure,
Mhm.
but it was more just in case we have to.
The overhead now is keeping the old
Yeah,
technology
yeah.
is gonna
I
offset
agree,
whatever
I agree,
the
I just
difference
wanted
in
to make
price.
sure we had the number in our mind.
Any questions from anyone that's online?
I'm all good.
Great. Anyone else? I just want to make sure we ask them.
All right, with that, I'll happy to introduce Mark Perino, our Director of Facilities, for it.
Thank you, Matt. I am Mark Perino. I'm the Director of Facilities here for the region now. And I'm happy to present my proposed capital improvement plan for the next 5 years. So some highlights from this past year since I've come on board. We've done a major HVAC replacement at Long River, upgrading the ventilation equipment. We completed the energy efficiency projects at both Woodland Regional High School and Long River Middle School. We've done some major painting at both Woodland Regional High School and Long River Middle School that included the front canopies on both schools. And we also did a pretty extensive tile project at Long River Middle School. Summarizing some of the key components of the 5-year capital improvement plan, we have some large-scale paving that needs to be completed at Long River due to some of the effects of this past winter. The entry doors for the nurses' wing at Laurel Ledge Elementary School need to be replaced. We need to add a crosswalk at PES that goes from the bus loop to the parking lot. We have a number of bad windows at the high school that have bad seals on them as part of the curtain wall system that need to start being replaced. The boiler controls at Woodland Regional High School also need to be replaced. And one of the big items for next year would be adding the stairs to the football field from the parking lot for spectators. In 22 and 23, we're going to have to possibly bond for the first time in 6 years because of the cost of the track. The possibility of having to replace the underground heating loop at Laurel Ledge Elementary. And I'm currently investigating a few years out, needing to look at possible replacement or repair to the gym floor at Woodland. Remaining projects for 2020 and 21, major repairs for the Woodland Athletic Field bleachers for all sports fields. That's approximately $21K. So those are some major highlights from the proposed budget.
Great. Any questions for Mark?
Mark, is the heating loop that you're talking about, just for my own understanding, that's not a geothermal ground loop you're talking
No,
about?
that's underground piping that was run before, when they added the additions onto the building to allow the heat to get to the units that are serving those pods.
It was individual pods we connected to the property,
Yeah.
so they're all underneath that connect.
These are the ones that we've been fixing piecemeal?
Correct.
along the way?
Yeah, I think in 2017 you had a major break, and then this past break, before winter, we had another one in November, I believe.
I thought somebody snuck geothermal heating in there at some point.
No.
I saw heating ground loop, I'm like, oh boy.
That would be nice. Regina'd be happy. Any other questions for Mark? Concerns? Suggestions? Okay, I'm gonna present the special ed budget. Sarah's on the call as well. The current special ed budget is $3,320,000. The proposed budget is $3,766,000. It's a $446,000 increase. Last year, this year, we have 10 students that are out of district. Next year, we're gonna have 13. We're actually picking 2 of them up this year. We'll be absorbing the costs. We also have a 3% increase in tuition for out-of-district students and 3% increase in transportation. It's a 13.45% increase in special ed. I am very proud of the special ed department, though. I think we've put a lot of effort into Tier 1 intervention. Our SRBI model was revised. We actually have a person that works full-time with our SRBI teams, with tiered interventions, with programming, with assessment. Last year, we were at 2019, 12.7 prevalence rate. This year, 12.5, and that's, I think, a result of the efforts we're putting in with our interventionists, our SRBI model, our professional learning, differentiated instruction, so forth. New programming changes next year, executive functioning curriculum for the middle school and the high school. We're going to be restructuring supports and programming for students with high needs to better support inclusion. We've enhanced our ABA supports and training for certified and non-certified staff. We did that with our professional learning for our peer professionals. We created a BT position in district that Sarah's been managing very well. I think we have 8 or 12, I apologize for not knowing that, where we have our own BTs this year, where we used to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars contracting with outside contractors. We still do contract with Beacon Services and IPP, Beacon Services and, I forget the other name, I apologize. And we do have vendors coming in, but we're doing a lot of it in-house ourselves. We've increased student independence in all school settings. Inclusion's been a big push for the last 2 years, and it's gonna be a push for us for the next 2 years. We're also looking at a comprehensive research-based reading program, K-8 in the region, where we could have our at-risk kids, our special ed kids, or identified students in a reading program that's research-based to reduce those gaps. I think that's probably, between inclusion and the reading program, that's a big push that we're gonna have this year. I think it's important to look at some of the comparisons of similar districts for enrollment versus pupil personnel. This is from 2019, 2020. If you look at our DERG, North Branford, or if you look at some of the surrounding towns, Oxford, Region 16, Seymour, Wolcott, Plainville, Ansonia, and Watertown. If you look at our enrollment, which it was 2019, we had 2,069 students. Our prevalence rate was 12.7%. Our school counselor, social worker, school psych pupil personnel was 15.6, which is 1 to 132. It was the best out of all those towns. It will remain that way even if we choose to reduce one. However, as I said, that's still in discussions so far. Our caseloads will not increase. That's basically it with the special ed proposed budget. Sarah, would you like to add or contribute anything?
Yeah, thanks, Michael, for sharing that. I think I wanted to acknowledge the increase, of course, and I think it's reflective of some of the inevitable ebbs and flows that occur with special education. As Michael mentioned, this is primarily a result of some factors that were outside of our control, to students moving in were already placed. But there are myths in our control as well, and so I did want to mention that I believe we are making progress with those factors. As Michael mentioned, we're improving the of our department overall, we're increasing our strategic programming, and we're further building capacity among staff, which will undoubtedly help us meet the needs of all students and also will result in savings in the long term.
Any questions for Sarah or myself with the special ed, or any questions as a whole before we move to the regular meeting? Anything you want me to look at or us to look at for next time as well?
This is Christine. I just had a couple of questions. I was wondering about your executive functioning. Is that a Tier 1 intervention, or is that for your special ed population? Good question. I think we were starting with it as part of our specialized support. We were looking to fold it into some of our active support classes.
Okay. And then my other question, general question, is related to the data on the surrounding schools as far as the assistant principal. We will look into that and get some numbers.
Yeah, well, I think Rosa said it in her question, so I didn't go to it, Christine. Most of the middle schools have 2 administrators. Some of the K-8s in the larger cities that have less than 450 students do have 1 administrator. One thing I was going to speak to at Long River is at Long River Middle School, we have 2 guidance counselors, a social worker, a school psych, and we do have a district-level special ed administrator that's there 2 days a week to work with our special ed population. We also have curriculum leaders there, and we'll have a teaching vice principal, which is similar to what we have at Long River Middle School. So I think our administrative needs will be met very well. Also, speaking to Derek, he was there, the present administrator is a 10-month administrator, so Derek was there alone for 3 months in the summer, and the building opened up better than it ever did, so I don't think there was any loss when we moved that position last year from 12 months to 10 months.
I know, but the kids aren't there in the summer, so these past 2 years have been, I mean, they can't compare them to typical years. I mean, we're out the last 3 months of school last year also, and this year has been inconsistent with our kids not being there 5 days a week and switching to remote learning and the other things we've had to deal with this year. I'm concerned still about cutting that position, I have to be honest.
Well, I'm glad you are, Christine, I'm glad you're honest. Absolutely, that's why we have these conversations. What I will say is we have been in 4 of 5 days a week since October, I think. And this summer, it's the same work, whether they're in school with the pandemic or not, the scheduling, the hiring of staff, the planning of professional development, that doesn't change whether you're in a pandemic or not.
Can I follow up to that?
Sure.
The teaching vice principal position that you lose, I assume it's a stipend position?
Correct, it's already in the contract.
Will that teacher have a free block to devote to administration issues?
If
or-
we need it, we would create that.
So it's the assistant principal, if we did cut this position, then one of the parents had asked, and I was wondering about that as well, with evaluations and discipline and those other responsibilities, is that all falling on Derek then at that point?
No. What we do now is we share all evaluations in the region as it is. All different administrators work in different schools. We also have what's called complementary observers in the district, people that are certified to do it. So that will not all fall on Derek.
Okay. And the discipline will be Derek, mainly the principal at that point, those duties that she has?
Discipline's hard to speak of. It's not like when I was a principal, I started at 20 years ago when I was a principal, when I first started. Discipline now is handled differently. Social workers are involved, guidance counselors are involved, administrators are involved. That's why we have such a substantial pupil personnel, especially in the middle school. A lot of it's done with counselors who call parents, who call meetings, who bring kids together for conflict resolution, as well as administrators. So I think it's much different than it's ever been. Out-of-district suspensions are minimal. The laws isn't changed on it. A lot of it's the work we do with kids in school before, Christine.
No, I understand that. Part of why I'm struggling with this is, I think a lot of the parents spoke to it as well, is that it's not just the numbers, it's the relationship that this administrator as well as the counselor has with the student body. And I feel like our kids have suffered so much this year with loss and family hardships and everything else, and to take away any support personnel that they may have a relationship with and be connected to just doesn't feel right. Not now, to do it this year. That's my opinion.
You have a voting position, I don't, Christine. I only present the budget to you through recommendations. It'll be this board that will decide. Michael Yaman does not have a vote on this. Okay? Anyone else? You're up, Chair.
Okey-doke, we're gonna resume to the regular Board of Ed meeting. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes from the February 24th Board of Ed meeting?
So moved.
Second? Robert? No, Robert and then Bob.
Kelly, did you get that?
Robert and Bob.
I did, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Can we just say our names when we do a motion, and first and a second for Kelly? Thank you.
Okay, are there any additions, subtractions, corrections?
We already did that.
Outside of that, right, but that's going to be into this minute.
No?
Okay. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. We had our comments or correct already. Correspondence is in the packet.
I think we've spoken to everything at this point.
Treasurer's report, Debbie?
The balance of the general fund as of today is $5,824,420.79. Tonight's invoices total $1,465,103.41. General fund $1,422,032.68. Federal and state grants $2,450. Adult ed, other grants, athletic fund $40,620.73. Capital non-recurring project 0.
Thank you, Nancy. We've missed you here.
Let's get here at last.
There you go.
Nice to hear your voice.
Okay, student reps, do we have anyone on?
Gavin
I was on.
or Kaylee? Great, you're up.
Okay, so the math happening I attached on the last page of my report, which I shared with you, from the World Language Department. They are investigating in evaluating online language courses in a way to search for providing students language study options. Once again, the Italian program is out. From the Fine Arts Department, save the date. Spring Musical is going to be happening on Friday, May 7th. Another save the date. The Spring Fine Arts Night is going to be May 20th. And from the Fine Arts Department, Miss Langwell's Advanced Photography course submitted work to the Brain Dance 2021 art competition. From Class Council, the class officers will be meeting next Friday, March 12th, to bounce ideas off of each other and discuss plans to decorate the cafeteria for more spirit. From the Interclub Council, ICC will be meeting on March 4th to discuss fundraising ideas. And from student government has recently passed 2 pieces of legislation that deal with the Citizens Discourse Compassion Contract. We would like to adopt this within Woodland and ask the town councils to support it in an attempt to make the school's environment even more welcoming than it already is. And that's my report. Thank you.
What does that mean, Gavin? Can you expand upon that? You're on the student government, correct?
I wasn't at that meeting, so if you don't mind, I'd like Kaylee to speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Kaylee, what does that mean? I haven't heard of that.
So the Citizens Discourse Compassion Contract, I believe, is just a contract that, it basically says,
You want to get back to us at the next meeting about it?
Yeah, my bad. Our student body president put forward that bill, but I can follow up with that.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I haven't heard about it. Thank you. Any questions for Kaylee and Gavin? Anyone?
Just curious question, here where it says the clubs are not updated. What was that?
I don't know.
Oh, so that's just saying that some of these clubs didn't actually run this year,
Oh, okay.
so it's not updated for this year.
Okay,
It's what from last year.
okay, so this group here, none of these have run this year.
They all ran. All the art club ran.
But that's just a list of the clubs that are at Woodland, but not all of them have run this year.
Or is it that they haven't given you updates?
Exactly.
Okay, because the Woodland math
Okay.
team is up. I wanted to recognize also, after 5 meets of Greater New Haven Math League competition, the Woodland team placed 6 out of 16 schools in the region and advanced to the state competition that will take place on April 7th. We have a list of students who represented Woodland and made great success. So I want to congratulate those students and the math team. And I'll be sending an email out to the board so they have a list of all the students and everything, and we'll recognize them at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gavin, and thank you, Kaylee.
Okay, Tony?
Thank you. So the finance team has completed the reclassification of all COVID expenses that we were able to claim under the Coronavirus Relief Fund grant. That has freed up $387,240 in the general operating budget. We are doing a final sweep of any expenditures to December 30th to see if there's anything that we missed, but we are pretty confident that that is very close to the number that we'll be able to relieve from the general fund. Food Services did receive their first matching funds grant for $5,431. Those funds are being used to offset the program's losses as they stand right now. The nice part is CSDE did issue a clarifying memo last week stating that ESSER 2 funds could be used to offset certain losses in that program. Eversource did announce last week that they anticipate implementing the rate increase that had gone into play in July, and then they reversed it. So we are expecting an increase of between 4 and 8% to the delivery portion of the bill. Which is why you'll see, as part of the budget for next year, we have a 6% anticipated increase to utilities.
6%.
Tony, can I ask you a question? Will that speed up our realization of savings in terms of the energy efficiency upgrades?
Well, in a sense, we're also speeding up our expenses to those lines as well, so. Your expenses are gonna go up 6%, your savings are gonna go up 6%.
Yeah, I guess you're right. What I meant to say is.
No increase helps us.
It'll be helpful, do you think, that we've done the upgrades versus not doing them with the 6%?
Absolutely. The delivery
That's what I was getting at.
The delivery portion of the bill is based on kilowatt hours used
Sure.
in a given month, and because we're now using less kilowatt hours, we are realizing the savings, but the price per kilowatt hour of usage is going up.
I get a question.
Yes.
On Eversource. If they go to 8%, is that kind of factored in as to how you already did this, or would there be another 2% increase in our budget?
No,
for utilities?
so the 8% is just for the delivery portion of the bill, which is approximately 60 to 70% of our bill based on the extremely low negotiated supply rate that we have. So 6% is still a good number to use there.
And when will we have the final figure? Or is this it?
Well, they're approaching Pura currently about implementing this, and Pura will make the decision on whether or not they will be allowed to. Eversource can't make the decision on their own to increase rates. They have to go through, it used to be called the DPUC, the Department of Public Utility Control, and now it's Pura, Public Utility Regulation Authority.
I think we should have a letter sent from this board.
Hopefully they get a big fat no on that.
Well, he could send a letter.
You know what?
It's gone up in the whole
Everybody else,
state.
well, you know what? Every voice counts.
Draft the letter, I'll send it out.
Okey-dokey.
It was discussed earlier in the meeting tonight that special ed has received notification of 2 new high-need students coming into the district. That has raised our proposed budget for next year by $273,500, and that is reflected in the new spreadsheets that you were issued tonight. And finally, my last piece is a housekeeping item. In July of 2019, $3,950 was expended from the capital non-recurring account to complete backfilling of the soil at Long River around the paved areas. We made a motion later in the year to add the fiscal year 2019 surplus of $243,990 back to that account to cover the expense and other additional improvements. However, we never put a motion before the board to allow spending that $3,950, so I'm asking for that motion to happen tonight.
Hey, I have one question, Tom.
Yes.
If you don't mind, Priscilla. Item 4, with the increase, did you give everybody, Tony, did you give everybody a copy of the increase to the town's contribution now that the budget went up?
It's in our PowerPoint
Okay, so
presentation.
can you speak to that for 1 minute? So,
Absolutely.
first budget meeting, what was the prospects number and what is it now? What was Beacon Falls and now? Now, this will continue to move, but this is important for people to know.
I was gonna ask for that.
You've got it, Bob, I'm reading your mind after 7 years.
And that's 63.5% to $240,000. That's what a prospect.
I mean, it's in your PowerPoint, but I think this is where it was until now, so I think it has to be discussed. I should have made you copies, sorry, I'll send it to you.
So prior to the increase that was outlined tonight, Beacon Falls had a decrease of $603,947, which is a 5.58% reduction. Prospect had an increase of $888,389, which is an increase of 4.3%. The new numbers taken into consideration mean a reduction to Beacon Falls $508,223, which is a reduction of 4.69%, and Prospect would see an increase of $1,066,164, which is a 5.18% increase.
So it was an increase of almost 100 and,
What was Prospect figure again, 1 million what?
$1,066,164.
thank you, Tony. Okay.
Okay.
I
So,
have
exemplary.
another question.
Yep, go ahead.
I noticed maybe a little premature since it just passed Congress today. Can you, for the next meeting probably, give us a feel for what the impact of federal aid coming to the towns might have on next year's budget?
I can give you a dollar amount tonight, but what hasn't been clarified yet is what those funds can be used for.
Okay.
We are anticipating about $820,000 from the American Rescue Act.
Over 2 years, right?
It is intended
You
to
can
cover.
go over 4 years, 3 or 4 years.
Yes,
can't it?
correct.
So who makes that
Wait,
decision?
over how many years?
Well,
Who's
it
right?
came out the other day, which I forwarded to Tony, was over 2 years, right? It was the $800,000 number. I don't know if you could use it over 4.
The money would be issued to us over 2 years, but I believe it's supposed to cover expenses through 2024.
Right. So we won't get it all next year.
So that's like 3 years. So who makes the decision as to how that gets broken up by the years that it's used?
So, federal legislator gets handed down to the Connecticut State Department of Education, and then their attorneys attempt to interpret the language as best as they can and pass that information down to us as to how we can spend it.
Now, if you remember last time, Bob, 6 months ago, me and Tony had to argue with the state all the way up to the top because they wouldn't let us use it. And it was a lot of work. So the restrictions are very, so this money that's coming in, we don't know what we can use it for, how it's gonna be rolled out at this point. And then it's gonna come to the state, and then the state's gonna decide how we could use it.
But we should have some feel for some of this money impacting next year's budget.
Yes.
Right, and we'll have that by, I guess, May.
I would like to say yes. As soon as I get a timeline from CSDE, that will be communicated to the board.
Because what I don't want to see happen is we all of a sudden we pass our budget and we could use some of this and we end up with a big surplus.
Yeah, but Bob, what
sometimes-
is if we don't, our budget has to be passed by May 4th.
Right.
Okay, and what if we don't have the information by May
Well,
20th
then
or
we
June
can't.
1st?
Then we can't.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as we'll get it, you'll get it.
If we get it, let's hope to get something by then. And I don't know who we contact to speed that up, or because we have to make through the budget by then.
Don't hold your breath.
You can't put these masks on.
That's fine.
That's true. I mean, I do think the state's done a great job in the last couple of months, I will say that, with the funding, with the communication, I do have to say that, but I don't know how quick we're gonna answers on that.
Yeah, okay.
As soon as we get it, you'll have it.
All right, and just so long as the public knows it's part of our deliberations, we're asking. And we're looking everywhere,
Through the chair,
okay?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to retroactively approve the appropriation from the Region's Capital Non-Recurring
That's in
Account.
an action item.
Wait,
for
oh, it is?
item
Yeah.
5, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you didn't have it on there.
No, that's right, it's in there, that's okay,
Apologies.
no problem. Okay, anyone else? Anyone up on the board? You're in silence, okay. Exemplary people.
Action item 5.
Compliments to the Hawkhead Lions for their coverage of the boys' basketball games. Many parents and grandparents appreciated the commentary and the listening and watching of the games.
Add the girls' games to that too, all the games they've been doing, which I think is excellent. And we
All the
sent them a
games?
little certificate, not just the boys' game, they've been streaming the girls' games as well.
Okay, thank you. And at Laura Lish, grade 5, student Noah Urbanowicz won the grand prize for the Aquarian Water Company's Black History Month quiz and writing contest.
We sent them a certificate as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, reporting to
Okay, I'd like to thank Regina. We've done a few things with the towns recently, which is interesting. Beacon Falls Historical Society is having their 150th celebration. We have a flyer that's circulating, and it's a logo contest. To kick off the event, Beacon Falls Committee, Beacon Falls Historical Society is having a logo design contest. We've sent it to Beacon Falls K-12 students, public, private, and their families. We're hoping to have some students design and submit it to the judges for the program and for the Beacon Falls Historical Society. So we're involved in that, and I'm glad we are at our schools. With Prospect, they've created a wellness initiative. The Prospect Town Council is developing a community wellness initiative. Invited representatives from Prospect's municipal departments, community services, Region 16. I requested for the initial meetings that Dr. Sarah Steinberg and Shelley, as well as Patricia Irachi, participate so that we can contribute to what the town's looking for. Shelley is actually going to be one of the co-chairs, and they're developing a mission, core values. They're talking about programs that will be inclusive, community events, integrity, lead by example, listening, reaching out and listening to what the community needs and wants, inspiring and support people to be active, well-being, whether at work or at home or at play. The goal is to outreach programs to employees, residents, and businesses of Prospects. So we're going to be part of the infrastructure in that, and we're going to be part of January. They have events from January to December. They're looking at kicking off as well as favorite meals, DIY projects, exercise classes, public health and safety. So Region 16 will be an active participant of the Prospect Wellness Initiative as well. As far as our COVID updates, I have to thank Naugatuck Valley Health District and our nurses. We're set for March 17th for our first vaccine for the entire region. And then April 23rd, it's a Friday, we're going to have our second shot. It's going to be a remote learning day. We're going to move it from a Wednesday to Friday, so it gives staff members the weekend to recover. Hopefully, there's nothing to recover from, but if so that's going to be a change in the calendar that I'll send out. I'm excited about that. With that being said, I'm going to jump to item 7. We have 2 reopening committee meetings in March, and we're hoping if the staff is fully vaccinated, if our COVID rate stays below 3%, I'm hoping we can get our K students in full-time and adjust the high school schedule so that students will be in 8 of 10 days on a 2-week cycle. So we have some aggressive plans in place. We're going to have reopening committee meetings, and hopefully we're moving to a better place for education. One thing I will say is I hear on the news all the time, we're hoping kids can get back to school, get back to school. I have to really compliment the administrators, the certified staff, the non-certified staff, the administrators, district office support, secretaries that have been able to manage substitutes, which has been a daunting task, custodians who have to go in on a weekend and clean. We've been able to stay open realistically since we started this year. Now, we've taken a different approach. We closed schools if they needed to be closed. We didn't close the region. So I'm really proud of what we did, and hopefully we continue to be progressive and move to opening with 5 days a week for some of our schools. I'm gonna hold Michelle and I'm gonna jump to the SAT day. And, actually, you can jump in. You might as well do the winter assessment report and then I'll jump back on and wrap it up. Thank you.
Absolutely. So you have some data to look at, which is kind of exciting in a year where we haven't had a lot of data from the past. And this brings us back to a conversation that we began in the fall about our iReady data. So I'm gonna try to encapsulate this for you because I did give you a lot to look at. Page 1, the first data chart that you're looking at is referencing reading. And a reminder that the data from 2019 to 2020 is pre-pandemic. Our winter benchmark is given in January, so this is how our kids were performing at that point, comparing to this year of the pandemic. So just taking that view. This data representation is looking at the same grade level, but these are different kids. So I think the good news in this representation is that when you look at how our kids performed in 2020 to 2021, they've improved. And that's what we would hope and expect in a normal year to see with our kids, and they did. When I compare last year in terms of the grade level to this year's grade level, we do see some areas of decrease. The next representation with reading on the next page is really looking at cohorts, which compares the same group of students over 2 years. So this is important because we want to see improvement with our kids. And you'll notice that there are some grade levels where we did see some decreases. Specifically in the area of kindergarten to first grade, which represents some of our more fragile learners. You know, quite frankly, in a virtual environment for some of these kids and what we've tried to orchestrate, it's been more difficult for these students. But yet, again, they have improved from the fall to the winter. And then the third representation that I have for you this evening is looking at iReady in the winter for the same group of kids over 3 years. And I did have an error in the 2020 winter data, which I will correct and give you a different representation of that. But in looking at this data, we are looking at Smarter Balance, which is the purple column. It's the only Smarter Balance data that we have that goes back to 2019. So for example, when you're looking at grade 3 kids, the last time these kids took Smarter Balance was in 2019. They were scoring at 68% proficiency. So where were they with their iReady winter data? Was at 41%. So it kind of gives you a comparison to see, and then you can follow that vertically across, okay, to see that, you know, in 4th grade, where the students ended up, and in 5th grade at 23%. So in this representation, you know, just trying to see and almost predict how will our students perform with the upcoming Smarter Balance as it relates to iReady.
Yeah, staff is gonna kill me for this, but I do hope we do have Smarter Balance testing this year.
Yeah.
I think we have to gauge how our kids are performing.
Absolutely.
And I know it's tough, but,
In person.
yeah, I think,
Well, we are set up, can I-
well, we're set up to do remote as well,
Yeah.
and we've already gotten that information out. I'm more concerned about I'm more concerned about how our kids in person are doing. And for me, it's only a gauge for what remediation we're gonna need to put forward.
Absolutely.
So I think it's tough, and parents may not be happy with my comments, but I do hope we're testing because we need to know what we need to do for our students, so.
It's
Go ahead,
important,
Michelle.
yeah.
I mean, I hate
No,
to
no,
say it. I
it
just
is
think it's
important.
important.
Very important.
It's really
It's a
important to
hard
know
thing.
what to plan for in the upcoming year.
There's too many unknowns.
Look, any questions with reading before I move to math?
Yeah, was there anything that stuck out with the reading with the 15% drop?
Was there anything that stuck out in reading?
Yeah, any particular topic or something?
Well, it is not unexpected to me, you know, the kindergarten to first grade cohort having a decrease. I think the 3rd to 4th grade cohort, when we see that decrease, the way that I interpret that is when you're transitioning and reading from grade 3 to grade 4, you're transitioning from learning to read to reading to learn, and it's a big jump for kids. And so in this time, where teachers are trying to orchestrate, reading in the way that they are, and the fact that we've been able to keep our kids in 4 days a week, but yet we still have kids that are distance learning. And we did have almost all of our kids take this assessment, even at home, those kids that were distance learning. I think that kind of speaks to what's going on with that. I will be talking to you next year about looking at our literacy programming and what we plan to do with that. Okay, to talk about math quickly?
Yep.
Okay, I'm moving along. So with respect to math, again, the good news is when we look at grade level comparisons, all of our grade levels improved in their math performance. A reminder that K through 5 with the Bridges programming, I have to say that I'm hopeful that that's what created some of these increases. And then again, looking at cohort data, it kind of tells a similar story as what we saw with reading with our younger kids. And then again, with our new programming coming on for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I think we'll see some changes with that as well. And then the final representation shows you again a comparison of iReady data with Smarter Balance the last time this cohort of students took Smarter Balance. So my hope is that moving forward, we'll be able to see some data that supports a lot of the work and the efforts that are going on right now.
I think it's a 3-year, it should be a 3-year window with the new elementary reading program and the new programs that are coming into the math. We should see a 3 to 5 years, we should see some steady growth. We've only been working on math for 50 years, so
Math is tough.
3 more.
We are not alone in the state on that.
No, I know, it's the state of Connecticut as a whole. Go ahead, Bob.
It's again, looking at the cohort data in math from 5th to 6th and then
Yes,
6th, 7th.
yes.
Those are significant, in my mind, significant decreases. I get the kindergarten for first.
Yep,
I understand that.
yep.
But are there issues that we can identify and take action on to improve their performance?
Well, what we're hoping, Bob,
The middle, again, it's kids going into the middle school, right?
well, what we're hoping is the new Bridges K-5 math curriculum is gonna make a difference. I mean, you can't say to the middle school, hey, problem is 6th grade, all of a sudden they come to 6th grade and math teachers aren't teaching. That's absolutely
No,
not correct.
I'm not implying that at all.
Yeah, no, I know you're not. So what I'm saying is, we took the approach, it's a curricular issue. So we had the math task force 2 years ago. We brought a brand new math program in, $60,000 math program. We did professional development this year, and we're hoping that the kids coming from the middle school are gonna be stronger, the building blocks of math, so that when they get to the middle school, we're gonna see better performance. That's what we're hoping.
I mean, I can say example fractions in 5th grade. And when we hit that unit with this new program, it was incredible what we saw with our kids in terms of what their needs were relative to that. So I think, as Michael referenced, it's going to be a wave that's going to happen. And then with the new programming that we have set up, coming up in with illustrative math, we'll see the same thing.
Question?
Absolutely.
With the reading from grades 3 to 4, it seems like that's always been a drop that you mentioned. Is there anything different we can do? Because I know it's been like 4 or 5 years where there's always that drop with a different learner.
Right.
So is there anything different that we can do to kind of minimize that drop?
So it's interesting that you asked that question, because in working with Michelle LaRusso, who is our SRBI facilitator and our literacy specialist, we are gearing up to begin a comprehensive review of our literacy programming and literacy instruction. How do we teach reading? And the research is pretty clear. Quickly on this is really focusing on phonics, phonemic awareness, how students acquire reading skills, and it begins with our youngest readers and building. So we're really looking at, ensuring that teachers understand how to instruct in that way, and they do. We have some great programming right now, but we're looking to accentuate that programming to make it even better and also support teachers in their understanding of how to do that.
Now,
So
the other thing is we're doing a change in the classrooms. We're really putting a lot of effort into small group instruction.
Absolutely.
So we've been teaching phonics since we bought Foundations in. Okay, and that's great. We bought Wonders in. But what we're trying to do, and I know some principals are collecting lesson plans and then seeing that it's taking place. Now, it's a little tough with the pandemic and getting kids in the group. But we've decided as a region, I think research says this, we put a lot of money, time, and resources into small group instruction. So we have 120 minutes or more in a reading block, and kids need to be broken up into small groups, and teachers need to work with small groups of kids. And that's why we put instructional aides into our kindergartens, our first grades, so that we can do that. So teaching kids in small groups, I think, is as important as anything else.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the key, and that's what we're doing in the last 2 years.
Absolutely.
Versus what we've been teaching, not to go against what you're saying.
No,
But I think
it's all
small
part of
group
it.
instruction and how we're teaching is more important than anything else. Because the only person that can make a difference in the classroom, and I believe this after 28 years, is the teacher with the student. That's
And there are principals also collecting student work connected to what Michael just spoke to. So all of those pieces together, I think are, yeah.
Any other questions now?
Thank you.
Michelle, are the iReady assessments norm? And if so, how often? I'm just wondering, like, after COVID.
Robert, I tried to think of the questions that would be asked.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
I can get back to you on that, honestly.
I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah. I mean, we find that it's a pretty good predictor of our kids.
Is it closely aligned with the state assessment? Do you find that there's a correlation?
Well, we've had a lot of conversation about that.
It's been
because
hard.
It's hard
Because
because
we
don't
haven't
have-
we only brought iReady in really 4 years.
Yeah, I mean,
4 years.
2019 was the first one.
And then, so we had a good year, but the Smarter Balance was a field test. And then we had a year of it, and then it went away, and now we're going, so the first year, they used to give us a printout, which was a predictor,
They would
and it was
tell us.
pretty good, and then they pulled it out, and I think they wanted us to buy it or something.
No, they didn't want schools to be so tied to, trying to get kids to
Teach to the test.
teach
Yeah.
for the test.
We thought it was a pretty good indicator, but that's why I think we need consistency with the testing again, so we can have longitudinal data to look at, and we haven't had enough of that recently. Because we used to have Ames Web, and we got rid of it with iReady 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a great question. But it is a normed assessment.
Yes. The question of how often, I can get that.
Only an IT guy would ask. How many?
Oh, I have it.
I don't know.
I know.
We didn't ask them that.
Looks
We
like
bought
you
it.
guys
Don't pigeonhole me, I'm a data guy.
Data.
Well, I knew you would ask the question. I knew you would have.
Told her
more
to be
for it.
ready.
I honestly, I had a whole
That's a
list
good
of other
one.
stuff that I could tell you about, but yes, thank you.
And you think I'm tough. Thank you, Michelle.
Absolutely.
I'm going to jump quickly just to recognize, unfortunately, we are not having our Superintendent's Award with our Southern Connecticut Association of Superintendents. However, we did award students, and we are going to have our own event here in Prospect for the families and the kids, and I'll inform the board. We're not sure, but hopefully when things loosen up, we could recognize them. We're not going, we usually go for an event with 30 other districts, and we recognize our kids. But this year, I do want to recognize Woodland for Student Recognition Award winners from Woodland, Brooke Iannone, Nicholas Santabasi, from Long River Middle School, Julia Rowley and Edgar Jorge, from PES, Morgan Cacase, and for Laurel Edge Elementary School, it's Noah's second time tonight, it's Urbanowitz as an award, and Region 16 Luncheon Award winners for 2021. We'll be recognizing those students as well in the next couple of weeks. At this point, the last item I have for an update, and I think Dana is on it, she's going to give us an update on SAT Day. It was asked last time, and I think we now have clarity on it. Dana, could you bring the board up to date on the SAT Day?
Sure. The SAT Day is going to be held on March 24th. At the high school, it will be a half day where we will dismiss at 12 o'clock with the exception of those students who have extended time. We're going to have to stay a little bit later than that. Our 10th graders will be taking the PSAT, and we use that data to determine which of our students we will be placing in our SAT prep class as juniors. And our junior class will be taking the school day SAT, which is the state standardized test that is now being used.
Thank
So
you.
our 10th and 11th graders will be present on those days, our 9th and 12th graders will be learning from home and will be given assignments to work on.
Dana, there was a question about, a couple parents asked about the PSATs. We can give PSAT previous years to parents with kids that want to study. I know we had that conversation. Can you speak to that for a minute, please, just so the public hears it?
The PSAT that we will be giving on March 24th, that's the PSAT that we use, that's one that we administer. The PSAT that students who opt to take a PSAT, that's taken during the month of October, and that's the PSAT NMSQT. And this year we did give that exam to our students only because we were unable to give it to 10th graders this past
Previous
spring
year.
due to COVID.
And we use that data for the math and the reading SAT prep course.
That's correct.
Thank you. Any more questions on that? Some board members had asked about it.
Can I say something? I just want to mention something about what we were talking about before. You kind of moved on before I had a chance to say it. About the math at the middle school that Michelle was sharing.
Yep.
Can we go back to that for a
Sure,
minute?
thank you, Dana. Go ahead, Christine.
No, I just wanted to comment, because I know I've mentioned it before about, if we've given any thought again to like a math lab type of situation like we have at the high school, for the middle schoolers. I know I agree with the small group instruction that you mentioned before also, but it seems like it's helpful at the high school. I don't know if that's something we want to think about or not. I just want to mention that.
I mean, you could bring that up to curriculum committee, to Eric and Michelle, and they can look into it. It is not something that I've had on the agenda, Christine. We have a math interventionist and 2 reading interventionists, and we have a math tutor at the middle school at this point. But the curriculum committee can definitely look into that.
Okay.
So you should just put it on your agenda in May when you come forward with the plans for world language as well. We'll put it on the agenda, Christine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, first action item under B, act to accept Mark Riley's letter of retirement effective 6/30/21.
So, let's see.
With appreciation. Thank you.
No, I'm just-
Second,
Bob, I'll second it.
by Bob. Okay, discussion? All those in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Yay. Okay, passes. Act to approve the new job description for district office special education pupil personnel services coordinator for restructuring at the district office.
Leslie, so moved.
Second,
I'll second it, Christine.
okay, discussion? None?
Is this something we could reevaluate if it's not working out? I assume
We
next
could
year.
reevaluate anything that doesn't work out, Robert. There's nothing you cannot, if you cut a position now and you bring it back, we brought kindergarten teachers back 2 days before school. There's nothing you do at a board meeting that you can't go back to.
I still have concerns about having 2 people with no clear chain of command in essentially the same position, but that's, we can see how it works out and reevaluate it.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Good comment, Robert.
Act to approve the healthy food certification statement for 21-22.
You ready? All right, here we go. I move that the Region 16 Board of Education approves the healthy food statement for 2021-2022 pursuant to Connecticut General Statute Section 10-215F, and certifies that all food items offered for sale to students under our jurisdiction and not exempt from the Connecticut nutrition standards published by the Connecticut State Department of Education will comply with the Connecticut nutrition standards during the period of July 1, 2021 through June 30th of 2022. This certification shall include all food offered for sale to students separately from reimbursable meals at all times and from all sources, included but not limited to school stores, vending machines, school cafeterias, culinary programs, and any fundraising activities on school premise sponsored by the school or non-school organizations and groups. And I need a second for that.
Okay.
Thank you, Robert.
Get it all,
Could you
Kelly?
repeat that?
Just for general, this is something that the state of Connecticut requires us to do.
Yes. Any
Moved
discussion?
and seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Okay,
Motion
now the
passes.
Connecticut requirements go further. I further move that the Region 16 Board of Education will allow the sale to students of food items that do not meet the Connecticut nutrition standard and beverages not listed in section 10-22(1)Q of the Connecticut General Statutes for the period July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2022, provided that the following conditions are met. The sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on a weekend. 2, the sale is in the location of the event. And 3, the food and beverage items are not sold from a vending machine or a school store. An event is an occurrence that involves more than just regularly scheduled practice, meetings, or extracurricular activity. For example, soccer games, school plays, interscholastic debates are events, but soccer practices, play rehearsals, and debate team meetings are not. The regular school day is the period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. Location means where the event is being held. And I need a second for that motion.
Rob Dyer, second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Aye. You're going. Number 6.
Oh, we're gonna go right to number 6.
Yeah.
I thought I'd catch a break with number
Oh,
5.
no, we can go.
Oh, allow me, I jumped the
Go
line
ahead,
earlier.
that's
I couldn't keep up with all the moving around
Yeah,
here.
that's right. Go ahead, Robert.
All right, make a motion to approve $3,950 from the Region's Capital Non-Recurring Fund to backfill the sidewalks at Long River Middle School following completion of the paving work.
Thank you. Second?
Nazir,
Second, Roxy?
Okay. Discussion? All those in favor?
All right,
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes. Now, Bob.
Okay, now, the craziness goes on. Apparently, we did not do this official reading on February 11th, 2020. So we need to go back and read. I officially move to revise the minutes of the Board of Education meeting, specifically motion 20-025, and approve the healthy food statement for the 2020-2021 pursuant to Connecticut General Statute Section 10-251F, and certify that all food items offered for sale to students under our jurisdiction and not exempt from the Connecticut's nutrition standards published by Connecticut State Department of Education will comply with the Connecticut nutrition standards during the period of July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. This certification shall include all foods offered for sale to students separately from reimbursable meals at all times and from all sources, including but not limited to school stores, vending machines, school cafeterias, culinary programs, and any fundraising activities on school premises sponsored by the school or non-school organizations and groups. I need a second for that.
Rob, second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
All
motion
right.
passes.
Moving along here, guys, you're keeping up with me real well. I again move to revise the minutes of the Board of Education meeting, specifically motion 20-026, and that the Region 16 Board of Education will allow the sale to students of food items that do not meet the Connecticut nutrition standards and beverages not listed in section 10-221Q of Connecticut General Statutes for the period July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2021, provided that the following conditions are met. The sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. 2, the sale is in the location of the event. And 3, the food and beverage items are not sold from a vending machine or school store. An event is an occurrence that occurs more than just regularly scheduled practices, meetings, or extracurricular activities. For example, soccer games, school plays, and interscholastic debates are events, but soccer practices, play rehearsals, and debate team meetings are not. The regular school day is the period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. Location means where the event is being held, and I need a second to that motion.
Oh, what do we got? Rob Dyer, second again.
Talk about micromanaging.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering,
We gotta keep the clerks of the state happy.
no, COVID was going on. How do I know what the parents are giving during the school day?
You don't, that's the problem, you don't. Okay, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor?
I,
Thank
And
you.
for all those
Motion
food
passed.
motions, I thank the superintendent for a box of Girl Scout cookies.
I got a book.
Are those part of the healthy food program?
At this point, I don't care.
Okay, old business. The yearbooks did come in. There is one here on the table if anyone would like to see it. Rob, you want it?
I would, actually, John.
So they did a nice job on it.
Okay, any other old business? Hearing none, new business. Hearing none. Items for the next agenda. Does anyone have any requests?
We are gonna present a facility report that Mark's been working on. I think I forwarded to Rob to review, and we'll be bringing that to the meeting.
Okay.
And then any updated figures.
Yeah, well,
Tony
of
might
course,
get.
the next budget, yeah.
When are you, Michael, when are you meeting with the, oh my goodness, the committee for bringing kids back? When's that meeting?
I have 2 meetings scheduled. I have March 29th and I think March 17th and 29th.
So
at
can
3
we put on
p.m.
there an update on that?
Absolutely. I'll update that every board meeting.
Thank you.
So 17th and 29th.
I sent another one today, because I'm thinking I want to be,
The
23rd and the 30th, I think.
and the 30th.
what is it?
The 23rd and the 30th.
The
Because
23rd and
I wanna
30th
be
are
in
the
front of
reopening
the-
committee?
I want to be in front of the board on April 7th. so
Right,
that's
it's not
why
the
I was-
29th, the 23rd.
The 23rd and the
And the
30th.
30th.
And the 30th,
And the
okay.
30th.
In the same time?
Yeah, 3 o'clock. Okay.
Anything, we don't have to know anything about the
No.
information items?
No, there's
Okay.
something.
The enrollment is in there.
Yeah.
Committee reports.
Just that up, Sue's
We
been very
have- yep.
productive, and our next meeting is the 29th.
Facilities, transportation.
We're gonna have an update at the next meeting, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. Curriculum.
Robert, I didn't
Policy.
plan a committee before, but there's
Public
something you want us to
communication.
add or subtract. It's a great document. I
Technology.
figured you would
I
drive
think
that.
that's.
Thank you, Matt.
Perfect.
It's a
Thanks, Mark,
start.
for the work on the facilities.
No problem.
Thank you for the work on the facilities.
Thank you.
Recognition committee. Liaisons.
Can't say I've been at the schools.
No, I don't have.
Central office looks nice.
If there's nothing else to come before this board, I will entertain an adjournment motion.
Rob, quickly, they are evaluated every year.
They are.
Norms
Well, that's
evaluated.
good.
Yes, every
That's
year.
good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn,
I
Carl.
beat someone.
Nobody?
Second.
And okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. The meeting is over. Thank you all very, very much.
This came out awesome.
Yeah.
We went with them the first time.